Watch right now on the Front News Project. Moscow is under attack again. UAF drones are striking military targets in the Russian capital, airports have been shut down, and this is just the beginning. The Russian summer offensive is in full swing. Preliminary results, 31,000 Russian conscripts eliminated. Hell in Kostyantynivka, daily enemy bombings continue. Watch fiery, intense and blazing footage from the front lines right now. This is the fourth year of the full-scale war that Putin's Russia started on Ukrainian soil. The Ukrainian armed forces continue to heroically defend not only their homeland, but the entire civilized world from the aggression of Kremlin war criminals. Greetings! This is Front News. I'm Volodymyr Timoshenko. For the next 30 minutes, you'll get the truth about the war, brought to you by our journalists from the hottest combat zones. So, are you ready? Then let's begin. And we'll start right away with exclusive material. NATO countries are once again scrambling their aircraft because of Russian attacks on Ukraine. This time we're talking about Poland. Let me remind you, just a few days ago, the enemy launched more than 700 drones at Ukraine. But things were also very loud in Russia. Drones paid a visit to the Moscow region. Due to the attack, Sheremetyevo International Airport temporarily suspended its operations. Additionally, according to American media, Donald Trump is considering providing Ukraine with an additional Patriot air defense missile system. When exactly might this happen? Find out in a report. One of the largest attacks, Russia launched a massive missile and drone strike on peaceful Ukrainian cities. The occupying forces fired dozens of missiles and more than 700 drones. The main direction of the occupiers' attack was the west of the country. Most often, threats were reported in Lugansk. About 50 drones and 5 missiles were headed toward the city. Due to the massive attack, Poland activated all its air defense forces and aviation. But it was loud in Russia as well. Drones paid a visit to the Moscow region. Because of the attack, Sheremetyevo International Airport temporarily suspended its operations. Moscow Mayor Sobyanin announced that UAVs heading toward the capital had been shut down. But Russians shouldn't get too comfortable because the drones might just reach the Kremlin. Meanwhile, the US president has started to publicly criticize the Russian dictator more and more often. Trump, unexpectedly for everyone, complained that Putin says a lot of nonsense and announced that he has a little surprise in store for him. CNN also published an exclusive 2024 recording in which Donald Trump tells donors that he once tried to stop Putin from attacking Ukraine. He threatened to bomb Moscow to hell.
The United States dissatisfaction is backed up by real actions. We're talking about a collective decision by all OPEC countries to increase oil production. Moreover, it's a significant increase from 440 barrels to more than 550. This in turn affects pricing policy and the potential for foreign currency revenue to flow into the Russian Federation's budget. Let me remind you, up to 30% of the Russian Federation's budget revenue depends on the sale of oil and petroleum products, as well as, accordingly, gas. I'll remind you of Trump's campaign words: if Putin doesn't come to the negotiating table, I'll give Ukraine so many weapons that he'll be forced to sit down at the negotiating table.
Additionally, American media reports Donald Trump is considering providing Ukraine with an additional Patriot air defense system.
Apparently, these concerns supplies not only from the United States, but also from our European partners, primarily Germany. In addition, the possibility of transferring some air defense missile systems of Franco-Italian production to the Ukrainian side is also being considered.
And while Ukraine awaits new weapons, the armed forces of Ukraine continue to hold back the enemy on the front lines. Russian occupiers amassed huge reserves, trying to use summer to advance as much as possible on the front.
This refers to expanding the theater of military operations to new regions of Ukraine that have not been incorporated into the Russian Federation by decree of the Russian dictator. First and foremost, this concerns Sumy, Kharkiv, and the threat of advancing into the Dnipropetrovsk region in order to expand the theater of military operations. In my opinion, this is an element of military political blackmail. In other words, the Russian Federation is proposing a so-called territorial exchange.
Currently, one of the most active sectors of the front is the North Slobozhansky direction. Intense fighting also continues in the Pokrovsk, Novopavlivka, and Lyman directions.
The most active efforts are, accordingly, the Russians' attempts to organize an operational encirclement in the Kostyantynivka direction. This is pressure from the Toretsk side and fighting in the areas of Obolonka and Deliivka. Unfortunately, there have been some tactical successes. The distance to Kostyantynivka is less than 10 kilometers. The Pokrovsk direction accounts for about 40% of the total number of engagements. The occupiers are mainly focusing on expanding the so-called wedge in the positions of Ukraine's defense forces between Pokrovsk and Kostyantynivka at the so-called Malinivka junction. In the Lyman direction, there has been a sharp escalation of the situation with the threat of an advance towards Siversk.
Meanwhile, Taiwan is preparing to launch the largest annual military exercises in its history. This was reported by Bloomberg. The Hankwang exercises, which began on the 9th of July, will last for 10 days. And now it's time to analyze the operational situation on the blazing Pokrovsk front line. The situation here is, as usual, extremely tense. On the Pokrovsk front, Russian forces attempted to advance 38 times on our positions in the areas of the settlements of Popovya, Mirnoye, Razino, Mirolubovka, Lisovka, Shevchenko, Zverevo, Udachnoye, Novosergevka, Muravka, Orekovoye, and Alexievka. Our defenders have already repelled 32 enemy attacks. The fighting does not subside. Meanwhile, the enemy's summer offensive, on which Putin seems to have staked everything, continues. But, as they say, there are some nuances. About 31,000 occupiers have already been eliminated. The Economist has called Russia's summer offensive the deadliest for the so-called Second Army of the world since the start of the full-scale war. The attempt by Russian occupiers to create a buffer zone in the Sumy region was met with powerful counterattacks by Ukrainian soldiers. But unfortunately, the number of enemy attacks is not decreasing. Russian troops are already 20 kilometers from Sumy. TSN Week war correspondent Andriy Tsaplienko spoke with Ukrainian defenders there in the very heart of the war and will explain why they are certain that Putin's war criminals will definitely not be able to capture Sumy. Let's watch.
June has become one of the worst months for Ukrainian defense since the beginning of the year. The Russian strategic offensive continues. According to analysts, over the past month, the Russians have occupied several hundred square kilometers of Ukrainian territory. At the same time, the overall rate of Russian losses is decreasing, and that's bad news because it means the enemy is adapting to Ukrainian combat tactics. The good news is that, alongside the lost territories, there are also settlements that have been recaptured. The enemy was unable to gain a foothold in Dakhne on the administrative border of the Dnipropetrovsk region, and in the Sumy region the enemy was driven out of Andriivka, where assault troops of the 30th Regiment of the occupying army had entered while advancing on Sumy.
We are doing everything possible to prevent the enemy from reaching Sumy.
Ole Shiriev, commander of the 225th Assault Regiment. Back then, when it was still a battalion, the unit made a strong name for itself during the Kursk operation, breaking through the border, advancing forward, capturing prisoners, and adding to its fleet of captured armored vehicles. The 225th Battalion was turned into a separate regiment to carry out extremely difficult missions when it is necessary to save the situation and assault a much stronger enemy. In Andriivka, the regiment accomplished its mission.
Translation from the video. As a result of the Kursk operation, the enemy was practically wiped out. The units that are now advancing on Sumy have been wiped out 4 times. The same can be said about the 155th Brigade of the 76th Division, which is now advancing on Yunakivka.
The situation in Andriivka could have become critical for Sumy. It is 20 kilometers to the regional center, the range of artillery fire. A command post of the Russian battalion had already been set up in the village. Its commander, Andrei Yartsev, was also there. The command post was destroyed. The battalion was cleared out. And according to intelligence, the commander was eliminated. But beyond Andriivka lies another occupied village, Kindratovka. It is much more difficult to drive the enemy out from there.
Translation from the video. We have completely blocked all routes for the enemy, eliminating any possibility for them to break through deeper into the Sumy region, both in the Andriivka and Kindratovka directions. But unfortunately, before we arrived in this area, the enemy managed to amass significant forces in Kindratovka, at least 2 battalions. These 2 battalions are already quite worn down. There is panic among the enemy there.
An MST-AB howitzer crew is covering the Ukrainian riflemen who have approached Kindratovka. Over the course of a day, the gun fires dozens of shells toward the enemy.
No less than 50.
Every day.
Translation from the video. Per gun.
Somewhere in the forest, a huge amount of other artillery is well hidden. We can't see it. We only hear how hard the Ukrainian artillery is working in the direction of Kindratovka. The guys are firing at enemy positions beyond the village of Andriivka. This is already Ukrainian territory. They are convinced the Russians have plans to advance on Sumy.
Translation from the video. The enemy is aiming to take Sumy. It's obvious, and it's unreal. Maybe to be realistic in about 20 years, but not now, that's for sure. Translation from the video. Do you think they're prepared to fight for 20 years? Translation from the video. Well, I don't know. I just said 20 years as a figure of speech. But they are definitely aiming to take Sumy, that's for sure.
In order to prevent this from happening, the regiment forces the enemy into counterattacks. The weather is changing, it started to rain, and artillery from different positions begins to pound a single point simultaneously.
Translation from the video. The task now is to aim in time and support our assault operations. Our task is to suppress the enemy during the counteroffensive, yes.
The downpour is hindering enemy drones, so somewhere near Andriivka the regiment is breaking through. While it's raining, while the weather is bad, the guys are taking advantage of the moment. Our forces launched a counteroffensive and the artillery of the 225th Regiment is supporting them. The work of an artilleryman is hard and exhausting. How did it go? Tell us about it.
From the video. It was fine. Excellent. The gun weighs 7 tons. Well, under the body armor, of course, I did sweat a bit.
But it's much harder for the assault troops right now. The wounded from Andriivka are first brought here to the regimental medical station near the front line.
At first glance, everything appears quite clear and straightforward here.
Evacuation is always a risk. Drones constantly attack evacuation vehicles, and then the wounded soldiers have to wait until rain and clouds clear the sky of drones. This guy with a wounded arm waited 8 days for his chance.
The bone fragments themselves, the bone debris caused a transport mobilization, meaning he's being taken to a specialized facility for an X-ray examination where his wounds will be stitched up, and then they'll decide how to fix the humerus. There will either be a plate or some other kind of fixator.
There isn't much space, but everything necessary to stabilize the wounded is here. Sometimes it is these frontline doctors who determine whether an assault trooper has a chance to survive. This fighter's leg was saved from amputation because of poor quality first aid at the position. It happens.
Fortunately, the tourniquet was ineffective, so the blood supply to the limb was sufficient. In this case, the poorly applied tourniquet actually worked in his favor. Can you hear me, Sanya? You're in hospital. Everyone here is one of us. You can hear me, right?
Here, lying on a bed in the stabilization point, a wounded man is asking to be sent back to the front line to his comrades, because they can't manage without him.
I absolutely have to be there, as they truly cannot manage without my presence.
It seems the spirit of these people is stronger than their wounded bodies.
Our guys are doing great, they're really giving them a hard time over there. There are 2 or 3 left, maybe someone else is hiding somewhere. They're like swamp toads, but our boys are getting to them.
In the near future, the regiment expects to reduce the number of losses, at least from drones. The commander claims that the unit is working on the design of a single-piece suit with elements of Kevlar and fiber fabrics. According to the major, such special gear will improve protection against shrapnel without affecting the soldiers' mobility. But the enemy in the Sumy direction is becoming more inventive and dangerous. The 225th Regiment eliminated a sabotage group that had penetrated as far as 5 kilometers behind the front line. The serious training of the Russian saboteurs is evidenced by a unique trophy that was captured, a hybrid of a cold weapon and a firearm. The regiment commander, who is knowledgeable in knife fighting, admits that he had only read about such a weapon in books.
A knife that shoots, honestly, this is the first time I've ever seen something like that. It fires silently.
A special unique round is loaded into the handle of the weapon.
This mechanism here is the safety, and this mechanism is the trigger used for silent elimination and conducting sabotage behind enemy lines.
The saboteurs' attempt to break through this deep is yet another sign of Putin's plans to reach Sumy, which at this point are unrealistic. They promise 2 to 5.
Ooh, if not 2 to 5? 2 to 5 is holding the line, but it's practically impossible for the enemy to do anything because we've already wiped out a couple of enemy battalions here. Our colleagues from our regiment have already taken back Andriivka and are now retaking Holosivka. They say it's an incubator there, they say it's an incubator for death, but as they say, welcome to Ukraine. Yes, we're expecting everyone, and everyone will stay here.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
And right now we're moving to the Kramatorsk and Toretsk directions of the front. The enemy army's bloody rampage continues here as well. In the Kramatorsk direction, our defenders repelled 2 attacks by the aggressors. The enemy carried out offensive actions, trying to advance in the area of Chasiv Yar and towards Pretekin and Bilahora. Another clash is still ongoing. The defense forces have already successfully stopped 4 enemy attacks in the Toretsk direction. The invaders tried to advance in the areas of the settlements of Delivka, Toretsk, and Yekaterinivka. Yesterday afternoon, Russian forces struck Kostyantynivka in the Donetsk region. As a result of the shelling, 3 people were killed and another was wounded. Yes, Kostyantynivka was once a city of 70,000 and now it is the center of the Donetsk region front. The Russians are constantly attacking this settlement, trying to reach Kostyantynivka itself, an important logistical hub for Ukrainian defenders. There are still civilians remaining there, approximately 9,000 people. Drones, guided aerial bombs, and enemy artillery, that's their reality, says journalist Ruslan Yarmolyuk, who has seen this life on the edge of death with his own eyes. We present to your attention this exclusive report.
It's already daytime.
Shells are exploding nearby, and yet she is watering the flowers. Lyudmila Andreevna lives in this bombed-out apartment building along with a few other neighbors.
We sit in the corridor, in the little corridors, while the shelling goes on.
Her living space is just a few hundred square meters. You can't go far because shells and bombs are falling everywhere.
Both during the day and in the morning. Both during the day and in the morning it's very expensive, they don't want to leave their home. We close the windows over there, and we live like this.
Vitaly Petrovich extends his injured hand in greeting. He went outside and came under fire. They put my hand back together, but not well.
There was this thing standing on the road.
There was a UAZ vehicle standing on the road. When it got hit, it started exploding, and the 2 of us here were knocked down.
Pensioner Vitaly was left alone. There's nowhere to go and no means to get there. So you could say, I've lived out my days, and that's already something.
I'm the only one living in the building. There's no water, only electricity and gas. During the day, it's sometimes quiet, but from 10 at night until morning, they bomb. Sometimes they bomb during the day too.
Huge ruined stone skeletons, that's what the apartment blocks look like without windows, with blocked entrances and collapsed roofs, without electricity or water.
We sat here, met up.
We sat here in the yard, met up, had a smoke, talked, and then went our separate ways.
Here, death walks the streets, and none of the locals know when their time will come. Everything around us is being utterly destroyed from the sky above. Is everything truly okay down here? Are you still alive and well? Seems like it. The church took the heat in front of the car. A car speeds through a street shrouded in smoke and fire. There are no people. On the road, there are pieces of roofs, debris, and branches from trees. The enemy is advancing on Kostyantynivka from 3 sides, trying to break through our defenses in Chasiv Yar and in Toretsk, as well as in other places. Attacks on civilians have become commonplace.
They try to strike at our rear positions, but since they operate without regard for the fact that there are civilians here, and airstrikes like the one we just witnessed are not prepared in 5 minutes. That strike wasn't aimed at us, it was planned, and it's clear that they had some specific targets in mind.
Even during shelling, the city keeps on living. Occasional cars drive by, locals hurry somewhere under the buildings, while enemy FPV drones and spotters fly in the sky.
It hits everywhere.
Shells land everywhere, both in apartment buildings and in private houses. That's why you have to move quickly and stay on your toes.
Quickly and always on your toes, ready to react.
In the evening, bombs will fall again and the locals will count the minutes and hours until dawn. And Ludmila will go out again to water her flowers.
These plants were already here, they were carefully planted in this location. There were roses, because every spring they planted them.
And now, an analysis of the operational situation on the Novopavlivka, Huliaipole and Orikhiv fronts. The enemy is becoming more ferocious here as well. On the Novopavlivka front, Ukrainian defenders repelled 18 enemy attacks near the settlements of Zaporizhia, Podubne, Mern, Shevchenko and Zeleny Pol. 5 enemy attacks are still ongoing. The aggressors' aviation launched strikes with unguided rockets on the settlement of Zheleznodorozhnoye in the Huliaipole sector and on the settlement of Plavny in the Orikhiv sector of the front. Yes, in the Zaporizhia region, the shelling does not stop. In Stepnohursk, a morning attack left a married couple wounded, and the day before, 3 people were injured in the region. The Russians attacked a civilian car in the Huliaipole community with an FPV drone and struck 14 settlements, damaging 25 apartment buildings and private houses. Meanwhile, the regional center is recovering from an enemy Shahed drone raid that took place early in the morning. Several Russian UAVs hit the private sector, a university, and the regional territorial recruitment center. 20 people, including 2 military personnel from the security company, were injured. TSN correspondent Kyra Oves will tell and show all the details.
Utility crews are still working at the sites hit by Russian Shahed drones. This time, the occupiers targeted the Zaporizhzhia Polytechnic University. 2 buildings with high-value specialized equipment were destroyed, dormitories were wrecked, and there are debris and burnt belongings everywhere.
A direct hit by an enemy UAV caused the fire on our roof. The walls and floors in this building have been destroyed. Our 4th building was also severely damaged, where the machine rooms are located and where almost all the production equipment is housed. Next, we will conduct an assessment and decide whether it is possible to restore part of this facility.
At the time of the strike, there were teachers and lab assistants in the educational institution. They managed to reach the shelter in time. At the moment, rescuers are dismantling the slabs while students and teachers are clearing the damaged classrooms and rooms of debris and glass.
Right now we are clearing out the glass for them. That's all for now. I saw a few of my classmates, but I recognize a lot of familiar faces. We're sweeping glass out of the workshop now, and then we'll see what else needs to be done. That's what we'll do. Right now we're dismantling the floor slabs that were damaged, we're taking them apart and containing the accident. The floor between the 5th and 4th floors was damaged.
That morning, as a result of Russian terror, 20 people were injured, including 2 soldiers from the TCC security company. These are guys who were transferred from the front after being wounded. Large fires broke out at the impact sites. More than 100 rescuers worked to extinguish them. Russian drones also struck the private sector. This is Irina's destroyed house. The woman suffered a concussion and everything in the house is broken. Windows, doors, the ceiling collapsed into the room. The family spends the night at their relative's place. In the morning, they return home to clear the debris and try to restore at least something. Irina still recalls that terrible morning in Horo.
I saw the Shaheds flying. I have cats and kittens. I started gathering them, but I didn't make it in time. A brick hit me right here. The ceiling collapsed on me. My head was split open. There was blood. Even now I feel unwell, but I still come here.
The woman has about 20 cats. 1 fluffy one died and 2 more were burned. She managed to find some of them, but now they have nowhere to live. The woman is trying to find homes for at least some of the animals.
Do you want a kitten? Do you need a kitten? I would give them to someone.
In total, as a result of strikes by Russian Shaheds, more than 30 private and apartment buildings, dormitories, public utilities and educational facilities have been damaged.
And now, let's move to the Kupiansk and Lyman directions of the front. The Russian world continues to destroy, kill and maim here as well. In the Kupiansk direction, since the beginning of the day, the enemy has twice advanced on the positions of our defenders near the village of Stepova Novoselivka. At present, 1 battle is still ongoing. In the Lyman direction, there have been 20 clashes today, 6 of which are still ongoing at this time. The enemy attacked in the areas of Novoryorivka, Novy Mir, Karpivka, Ritkodub, Zelenaya Dolina, Kolodyaz, Zatorske, and towards Serebryanka and Hyorivka.
24 hours straight of hellish work without even a minute's break. One crew replaces another. On the Solidar front, the enemy has intensified its assault, so for FPV drone pilots there is work every day, I'd even say every minute. And they also hunt for enemy equipment and artillery. A report from Donbass by TSN correspondent Ruslan Yarmolyuk about life underground without daylight.
Do you see the Russian stripe?
I see.
The pilot with the call sign Vandal has locked onto a target and is now directing his FPV drone at the enemy.
There are some groups out there, they try to sneak in 2 at a time. That usually happens in the morning 2 by 2. They come in, get caught there, and that's it.
These guys fly both day and night, in any weather.
A headwind or strong crosswind means the drone flies slower and the battery drains faster. And you can't fly as far.
Everyone in this crew is a former infantryman, all of them.
Popasna, Svitlodarsk, Luhansk companies. Then I got wounded, went through treatment, and returned to the unit.
Fanat, the loader, prepares the drone for takeoff and selects the appropriate munition for the mission.
Shaped charges, high explosive fragmentation rounds. Well, those are the ones used most often.
Most of the time, these pilots spend underground, in confined spaces.
In summer, it's fine, it's hot outside, 38 degrees.
It's hard to get used to, but it's for the pilot's safety since the enemy hunts them just as relentlessly around the clock. If our position is detected, everything comes flying at us, from drones to guided bombs.
Every other night, they hit us for sure. And on other nights, it's about 4 or 5 times, it varies.
Our pilots also keep an eye on enemy infantry and equipment, especially enemy drone operators.
It's harder to find them in the summer because, as they say, there's a lot of greenery. It's difficult to spot the antenna, the cables and all that. In the fall, it's much easier. They hang them on trees, set them low, so it's easier to spot them. We've already destroyed quite a few. Most of the antennas have been destroyed and maybe about a dozen pilots.
Underground, time slows down and day and night blend together, especially when infantry assaults keep coming and you constantly have to launch drones. You have to forget about sleep.
We won't have any peace or tranquility until the enemy is completely destroyed and utterly vanquished, unless there's a second, more powerful wave of attacks that we must contend with.
As technology advances, it's getting harder and harder for our FPV operators to fly. The enemy is using powerful electronic warfare stations and so-called curtains.
A curtain basically blocks your video feed. It just turns your screen white or black, and that's it. And switching channels doesn't really help because it affects all channels.
This crew alone has taken out more than 15 enemy artillery pieces and 2 tanks. The guys are young, and all of them are former gamers. They dream of a time when flying or fighting will only happen in computer games. At home, in peace and quiet. That's all for today. But very soon on Front News, you'll see new, unique reports from our journalists in the hottest spots of the war, brought to you so you can know the truth. This was Vladimir Timoshenko. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones.